The Russians are very visible in Hanoi, hundreds of them, advising and counseling. Every morning before school, children in Hanoi practice grenade throwing. There's a faint air of menace and of suspended animation about the place. How free is Vietnam today? Arriving in the middle of the National Day celebrations, we found a more relaxed city than we'd expected. The victorious but costly war against the South has been over for 5 years. The wounds from last year's bloody battle with the Chinese are healing, and Kampuchea, where Vietnam is fighting its latest war, is a long way away. The posters proclaim 35 years for independence, freedom, and socialism, but just how independent and how free is Vietnam today? The answer seems to be that it's almost totally dependent on the Soviet Union. $3 million a day it's said to cost the Russians, who supply all of Vietnam's petrol and military hardware, and with 1 million men and women under arms, that's a heavy commitment. In return, just about everything Vietnam produces goes to the Soviet Union, from anthracite to vodka. The official shops carry a meager array of goods, and there are frequent shortages. So the government turns a blind eye to the flourishing black market, where prices are astronomically high. Pork costs £5 a kilo. That's about half the average monthly wage, so most Vietnamese eat very little meat. Rice is about £3 a kilo, 20 times the official ration price, and yet Vietnam is supposed to be a rice-growing country. British cigarettes used to be on sale openly, but the government banned all foreign cigarettes a month ago, and now they're kept well out of sight, but are available at a price like Russian drugs. 7:30 a.m. in the middle of Hanoi, at the peak of the rush hour, except it's hardly a rush and there isn't a traffic jam in sight. Offices open at 8 and close at 4:30, the old French colonial hours. Hanoi has a population of about 2 million, and almost everyone has a bicycle. There are about 30 million bicycles in Vietnam. That's almost one for every man, woman and child in the country. Some large families have 10 bikes in the backyard. And if you buy a brand new French-made Peugeot, it'll cost you about £300. But there's one particularly fascinating thing about Hanoi, and that is that there is virtually no traffic, no car traffic, because there are no private cars except those owned by diplomats, and very few official cars. So for the most part, it's a wonderfully silent and pollution-free city. In fact, a cyclist paradise. Every day, this supply train leaves Hanoi for Lang Son, near the Chinese border, Vietnam's most sensitive frontier. It's just 18 months ago that the Chinese came over the border with 250,000 men and tried to teach the Vietnamese a sharp lesson, as they put it. They finally captured the provincial capital of Lang Son, although it took them much longer than they expected. And what they didn't destroy capturing it, they blew up when they left, and the Vietnamese say 700 civilians were killed. The market in Lang Son was completely gutted and is still derelict. Across the street, beside a Buddhist temple, a barber has set up temporary shop. Ironically, the temple was used mainly by the Hua, people of Chinese origin. The Buddha escaped with the loss of an arm, but the famous smile is a bit crooked now. On the way out of Lang Son, the Chinese blew the big bridge. Now, one-way traffic bumps painfully across a temporary wooden structure, the only supply route to the front line. The Vietnamese army is dug in along all these mountaintops that dominate the valley and the border with China, and the main road from China to Hanoi. The road along which the Chinese army invaded last time, and the road along which they'd have to come if there's another time. You've only got to look at the rugged terrain to see just why they had so many casualties. The border itself is only about 3 miles down this road at a place that used to be called Friendship Gate, but no longer.
The Vietnamese don't want us to go any closer to the border because they say the Chinese might mistake us for Russians and they might start shooting at us.
We did finally persuade them to let us go a bit further, until a mile on we came to the end of the road. Another bridge blown, and to the left, a few hundred yards away, the border town of Dong Dang, now deserted except for the Vietnamese army. Some soldiers were doing a little bit of hoeing to while the time away, their AK-47 assault rifles casually stacked against a tree. They wash their boots in the river while they wait for the Chinese, 30 divisions, 300,000 of them, up there in the hills. There's a faint air of menace and of suspended animation about the place. In Lang Son, the trains no longer run on time. Sandy Gall, News at 10, Lang Son on the Chinese border. Women seem to do all the work in Vietnam, while the men, about 1 million of them, are in the army. Machines are scarce, but manpower, or woman power, is plentiful. When they do have a free day, they are sent off at least once in their lives to visit the holiest shrine in Vietnam, the tomb of Ho Chi Minh, the father of the nation. Vietnam has a long and proud history of warrior kings, but there's only one national hero today, and that's Uncle Ho, as he was always called, who died in 1969. Like Lenin's tomb in Red Square, his marble mausoleum dominates the center of Hanoi. The Guard of Honor goose steps with Russian precision, while the peasants from the cooperatives queue up patiently and reverently. Ho Chi Minh always believed in playing the Russians off against the Chinese. His successor, Le Duan, Secretary General of the Vietnamese Communist Party, has made Vietnam one of the Soviet Union's closest allies, an Asian Cuba, and a bitter enemy of China. The Russians are very visible in Hanoi, hundreds of them, advising and counseling, and generally making their bulky mark wherever they go. One of their favorite places, funnily enough, is the dollar shop, where you can buy Scotch whiskey, French wine and brandy, and Japanese stereos, only for dollars. What they don't need to teach the Vietnamese, however, is how to fight a war. That they all seem to understand extremely well, even the youngest. These boys study the remains of an American B-52 bomber with the same enthusiasm as other boys would devote to model trains. The Army Museum is a popular place for children of all ages. Inside, they've reconstructed an American air raid on Hanoi, with bombers swooping, anti-aircraft guns flashing, and sirens howling. The audience watches spellbound. Uncle Ho would be proud of them. Sandy Gall, News at 10, Hanoi. Every morning before school, children in Hanoi practice grenade throwing. They use wooden dummy grenades, copies of Russian stick grenades, and they throw them as if they really meant it. Grenade throwing is as popular in Vietnam as throwing the cricket ball back home. There's also a bit of political indoctrination as well. This goes on every morning for the first week back at school, and then more formal lessons take over. Secondary school children learn English, French, and of course, Russian. Everything in Vietnam comes second to politics, even military training. Young men of 18 have to do 3 years national service. The new flats for skilled workers and middle-rank party officials are utilitarian at best. But at least a family will have 2 or 3 rooms here, unlike most families in Hanoi, who have to make do with 1 room, sometimes shared by 10 or 12 people. Because of the pressures created by overcrowding, people spend as much time as possible out of doors, often sitting and even sleeping on the pavements. The heat and the humidity make this very possible. But the greatest pressure of all must be on young lovers. To be alone, they must take to the streets and parks. A lot of courtships are carried out on the back of a bicycle. boy peddling, while girl demurely rides pillion. And when the light fades, they take to the benches, beside one of the many lakes that ring the city. Sandy Gore, News at 10, Hanoi.